On behalf of the family that's here today, I know that they wanted me to express to you to thank you for your love and support for them during this time. As much as they've enjoyed that, they said that you're just showing them what Bill probably showed you throughout your life. And so they wanted to say thank you so much for the love and support that you've given them during this time. And let me challenge you not to forget them after today. Okay, they're going to need your love and support even after today. Okay, so don't forget that. Today we want to celebrate Bill Gant, who passed away Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Bill was born on February 6, 1966. He's survived by his wife, Amy Gant, Bill's two daughters, Alexandra Gant and Jessica Gant, who were the lights of his life. He also leaves behind his father, Mark Gant, his twin sister, Nancy Gant Gimble, his brother, Mark William Gant, his brother-in-law, Jack Gimble, his brother-in-law, Mark T. Leaport, and his parents-in-law, Vicki and Mark Leaport. As you know, Bill was known for his work in the hospitality field, where he thrived in his career. He was most notably for the opening manager for the Renaissance Raleigh North Hills, where he received numerous honors. Bill was also very well known in his community, served on many boards, probably with a lot of you here today. He was also known and loved by his family and his friends. He was loving, he was compassionate, he was caring, he was just a great individual. Bill's unforgettable smile, his generosity, and his spirit and his presence will be deeply missed today. His legacy of kindness and love will live on in our hearts forever, though. These are the things, as we continue in this service, that we're going to celebrate, and we're going to celebrate the man who he was, because I believe if you've lived a life worth celebrating, then we should celebrate that life. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. And to continue on this celebration of life, many of his family and friends do want to say a few things in memory of Bill today. And the first one who's going to share today is Mark Leaport. So Mark, would you mind coming and sharing a little bit?
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for all being here. We honor our families, the Gants, the Leaports. Again, we're honored that you're here. I read the other day as I was trying to prepare some remarks which are difficult for me to do today. Mark Twain said the two most important events in life are, one is being born, the other is why. So as I thought last week, it's been really difficult for any of us, I'm sure in this room, to figure out why did Bill pass? Way too young, way too early. Such a great man. And in fact, not only a great man and a great gentleman, but a great gentleman. Bill was one of those rare people that had a way with people, that when he initiated conversation, he really connected. He knew what people's emotions were. He could feel them. He could relate to them. He could make people, whether they're colleagues, family, friends, anyone, he just had a great knack of making people feel good. I'm honored that I knew him for 22 years. And as I thought back this last week, and not wanting to get too wordy because I have so many good things I could say about this gentleman, my son-in-law, Amy's husband. Oof, it could go on and on. But here's one thing that hit me, and it hit me kind of day after day as I've spoken to a few of you in the last week about thoughts of Bill and Bill, who was Bill. And it made me realize Bill was a very, very powerful man in his quiet way of living. Bill did something that most of us can't do and don't do, and it was out of habit. Bill would reach out to people all the time, whether they were friends, relatives, colleagues, and he would say, just checking in. And I realize now, speaking to many of you, it was much more than just checking in. Bill would confide, he would counsel, he would feel one's emotions, he would share emotions, he could speak the truth, he could interrelate as very few people can, and he did it all the time. It was indeed something that I think, as I look back in his very quiet way, it was a very powerful emotion in the way that he lived his life. So today, we celebrate him. And as I, with Amy, Vicki, and Bill would do often, and I wish I could do it one last time, we would sit around the kitchen table and we would toast over a glass of champagne, a glass of wine, and just toast each other for who we are as a family together. And one last toast, Bill. We love you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Next up, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind stepping forward to share something.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mark, you're so lucky you got to go first. I've been with Concord for 21 years now, and had a brotherhood with Bill for the last 20. The first year we knew each other was a little awkward. He was a bit standoffish, and I know this doesn't sound like the Bill we knew, but about 6 months after I'd been with Concord, his hotel was next to ours. I came in and I was a GM with Carly Trumpio next door to his hotel where he was an agent. And we finally had a meeting, and he said, let's go catch a beer. And I thought, yeah, let me go catch a beer and connect with this guy, because I knew he was, he'd been with the company a little bit longer, and I knew he was really good at what he did. And while we were talking, he was telling me about his aspirations to want to be a GM, run his own property. And I said to him, I said, why didn't you post for the GM job at the Courtyard, that the job I was in? And he goes, well, you took that job from me. I said, well, that explains a lot of what went on the last 6 months. A couple years later, we kind of both followed each other here to Raleigh. I got a great, what I would call a dream job. He also got what he probably would have said was a dream job, to be the GM, as was mentioned, at the Renaissance. And I remember as we were both kind of considering this and we were talking to each other, I said, hey, if you don't watch out, I'll post for that Renaissance job. I'd be pretty competitive. And he said, yeah, man. He goes, you're not going to get that job over me. I go, you don't know. I did it once. He said, yeah, no, you're not. I said, oh, yeah, why is that? And he said, I'm surprised you don't know this, but I'm dating the president's daughter. I said, look, some people have the nerve and the courage to want to be the GM for the flagship hotel where the corporate office just got moved. That's risky. Maybe some people, I'll be clean, want to date the president's daughter, but nobody does both. He said, I also think I'm going to marry her. And I said, forget it. You can have the job. I don't know. Shortly after I got here, me and my kids went through pretty bad tragedy, and that's when I went from friends with Bill to really, I would say, brotherhood. If you knew Bill, he was always out and around at the Renaissance. He didn't come out to greet you. He was already out there as you would come through. So my kids started this relationship too with Bill because he was there. I remember one time we were at North Hills, probably just messing around. I was a single parent, just whatever I could do to keep a 2 and a 4 and a 6-year-old busy. And he said, yeah, come on over. He goes, I'm leaving a little bit, but let me say hi to the kids. So we did. We came over. I said, hey, I'm going to go hide in the back of the restaurant and just kind of sit there. And then come say hi. And I got to get these guys home to bed. So I'm waiting for Bill. And then all of a sudden, 3 of the biggest chocolate, lava, brownie, cake desserts get dropped in front of all 3 of them. I go, that's not ours. And they go, yeah, it is. I go, well, no, it's not. I go, well, where'd it come from? And the waiter goes, from those 2 guys, and it's Bill and Richard looking over the loft, staring at us, just laughing their tail off. And Bill came down, he said hi, and I said, you're out of your mind, man. Couldn't you just done 3 forks and 1 of these? So it was a really long night for a single parent to put these kids to bed. And then, he's a hard guy to get back at. And so about 15 years later, I finally thought I got him. Me and Bill and I think Grant and Helene, who all work with us, we were traveling through DC to go, try to win this new hotel deal. It was a pretty big deal. And I don't remember really today why this happened, but, Helene was in charge of the plans and she didn't make us reservations and we were staying overnight and it was sold out everywhere. And Helene found 1 room and now we're starting to walk through hotels to just see if they've got anything. And we walk into a hotel in DC, and Bill just happens to know the desk guy working there. So anyway, it works out where there's only 1 room left. So I've been in this industry for 30-some years. I've only shared a room with a man once, and that was that night, but I would have only probably done it with Bill. So the next morning, we're walking down the street to go to this deal, and Bill's ahead with Grant, some other folks, and I'm walking with Helene, and I'm like, I got him. And she's like, I'm so sorry you guys are staying in the same room. I said, it's okay. I said, but as long as I've known Bill, I actually learned something about him last night that I had no idea. She goes, what's that? Meanwhile, they're about, 5 steps ahead of us. I go, did you know that Bill has a full Disney back tattoo? Right? All of you know that's not true. Helene, Cornell graduate, I just want to say, says, are you kidding? I said, no, I'm not kidding. I go, just ask him. He'll tell you. So I'm like, I got him. A little bit later, we're at lunch, and Helene goes, so I can't believe this. I know you ride a motorcycle, but Kevin told me you have a full Disney back tattoo. And at that moment, I'm like, I got him. And he just looks at her and goes, you didn't know that? Still. Let me wrap up with one more story if I can. So, like I said, my kids, got to really know Mr. Bill really well, and it was, I don't know, they were now going into grade school, coming out of grade school, late grade school, so they kind of had aware of a little bit about life. And I remember my daughter Amanda said to me one day when we were coming through North Hills, and Bill was in the lobby as always, talking to everybody. And she goes, "What does Bill do?" I said, "Bill's the general manager." She goes, "Oh, okay. What does a general manager do?" And I started trying to explain that to her, and she said, "Yeah, but he's always just standing around like he's doing nothing." And I said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. Bill absolutely did nothing." But what we all wish we would do. That's what he did. He connected, as Mark was referring to, he really connected with the hearts and souls of everybody he ever walked into. Age, race, where you're from, it just didn't matter. When he laid them eyes on you, he just listened to you. But that is what made Bill so successful. I think, and I'll close with this, when I was in my probably late 20s is when I realized that, collecting friends and having the biggest friend group really isn't what made you rich. It was like just having the quality of a few relationships that would follow you through life. And Bill's probably the one person who just, didn't get that. Like, he seemed to collect friends by the dozens all the time. And so I don't have a Mark Twain quote, but I did listen to this podcast. The Navy SEAL guy was talking. I know, just relax. I'll connect the Navy SEAL and Bill. It's hard to do, but this Navy SEAL guy said, you don't need a lot of friends and people in your life. He said, you need 3 friends. He said, you need a truth teller, somebody that no matter what is going on will call you out on your SHIT. And he'll hold you accountable for that. He said, you also need a confidant. He said, someone you can trust to tell them anything. And know it stops there, but also know that they'll be there to counsel you. And then he said, you need a ride or die. Somebody, if you call at 3 a.m. and you say, I need you, all they say is, I'm on my way. Last Tuesday, that's probably still true, but I realized for me, I only needed 1 friend. And I know that he was all of that or some of that for everybody in this room and hundreds or thousands of others that wish they could be here. I will close with this. Amy, I do hope wherever he is at, it is where every cat gets reincarnated. And I hope they have no lint rollers. And if I see him, I will have the only lint roller, and that day I will have gotten him back. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. At this time, Dermit, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
I have Bill up here with me. It's my last picture taken with him about 7 weeks ago with this Bill grin to keep me on track. So I met Bill 40 years ago at RCC, Rockland Community College in New York. My sister Grace made the intro and always loved the fact that she introduced me to my bestie. We became fast friends. And speaking of fast, Bill was a sprinter, and so was I in our respective high school years. One day, he asked me to race him at the indoor track at RCC. I took off like a bat out of hell. And when I crossed the finish line, I waited. I waited a while until Bill turned the bend, limping and holding his hamstring. That was probably my first memory of how Bill could talk a good game, and I loved him for it. He was confident and ambitious and always fun and caring to be around. I met my beautiful life partner, my wife of 33 years, Moon, through Bill back in 1988. He also introduced Moon's sister, Hazel, to her husband and now my great friend, Steve, from their married days. I had the honor co-sharing with Jimmy Williams here for best man for Amy and Bill's wedding. So I owe Bill a lot. He has been a constant in my life. Even when he moved from New York to Raleigh, we would always check in with each other, see each other when we could, have dinners and drinks, and spend our time laughing and joking around and catching up on family and friends. He was there for all the moments that mattered. We were both very proud of each other's lives and the accomplishments that we had both achieved, having started at a community college all those years before. Bill was steadfast in his commitment to the people he loved. He was a faithful husband, father, son, brother, uncle, cousin, colleague, and friend. He adored his two girls, like we all do, Alex and Jessie, the lights of his life. He was so proud of you, and he always lit up every time he was telling me what you were up to, what you were doing. He loved that you grew up to be strong, independent women. You are his wonderful legacy. He loved you so much, Amy. You brought him endless joy. He was able to be his goofy self with you, and that made him so happy. He never liked to leave you for too long. I'm sure we all figured this out. And that's why his personal and business trips were always short. I know he was your everything, and you were his. He would always tell me how good your mom and dad, Mark and Vicky, were to him. Mr. Gant, Mark, I'm still getting used to that. This is not the order of things. You have been so strong these past few weeks, this past year actually, and beyond. Bill loved to tease you, and you just smiled back at him like a champ. In many ways, you were like brothers. The bond you had, it really was easy to see. It was love, always love. He cherished his older brother, Mark, and his twin sister, Nancy. Sorry, Nancy, I have to go here. Who he would lovingly but relentlessly tease and post the funniest or the most awkward picture of Nancy on Facebook on their shared birthday every year. I'm not going to list the family. They all were listed earlier. But Bill loved his family. He will always be with you, in your heart and in your mind. His love and advice will continue to guide you in all the years to come. And you will see what I mean. Bring him into your mind's eye. Listen to your heart. He will be there. He will guide you. Bill was goofy, but he was also a cool dude. Tall and handsome, quick with his big, broad smile or his Cheshire cat grin. He could hang with anyone from all walks of life. He loved people, and they loved him back. How many of us have received his classic Bill birthday song on voicemail? This is your birthday song. It's not very long. Hey! Followed by a personalized, customized, heartwarming message. I still have his birthday voicemail from 2023. As I picked up when he called me on 2024, I will cherish that for all my days. We all know, or we are hearing so many stories of how Bill made them feel special, what he did for them, always looking out to make sure that they were okay, that they felt heard, needed a hug, made them laugh. Do you need a drink? Have you had enough to eat? Do you need a hotel to stay in? His generosity knew no bounds. My niece Lily, who told me a story when she heard the sad news, that when she was at my mother's funeral, her grandmother's funeral, almost 20 years ago, she was crying a lot, and Bill sat beside her. He put his arm around her, and he comforted her. She said she never forgot, and she was only 12 years old. He also had a special place in his heart for his Harleys and for his biker family. I still have lovely memories of Jessie in particular, with her boots on, riding on the back of her dad's hog. Ride on, Billy boy. I spent a weekend in Raleigh with Bill, Amy, and their families less than 2 months ago for his mother Cheryl's celebration of life. We talked about our lives, how things were going well for us both and our families, and trips about the future, for the future. He was so happy that I was enjoying my retirement and said that he was close to making that decision too. even though he loved his work and the people he interacted with. Like you, the shock of his sudden passing has been devastating, but I keep seeing him or hearing him when I get sad. And I know that he would understand our sadness, but he would press us to remember the good times and live our lives. If we ever needed an example that tomorrow is promised to no one, this is it. So let us honor him with our compassion towards others and our humor. I was on a golf course with Moon when I got the call from Alex that her dad had passed. I still can't, but I couldn't process the news. We packed up our clubs, and as we got to the clubhouse, the outdoor restaurant was playing a song. Because I got a peaceful, easy feeling. And I know you won't let me down. And I thought, that's how people felt when they were with Bill. He gave us all a peaceful, easy feeling, and he never let us down. Looking at his picture. Rest in peace, our dear Billy. You'll always be my best man and my best friend until we meet again.
Thank you for sharing. As you can see, Bill was a lot of things to a lot of different people, but he meant a lot to all of you. And as we continue on in this celebration of life, at this time, we're going to have the song Amazing Grace played during this time. So just sit and you can come up and come sing.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Thank you very much for that. So today we're celebrating the life of Bill, and he was a lot of things to a lot of different people, but for those who knew him, he was just special, right? He was just a special person who you just enjoyed being around because he was just that type of guy, right? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to know Bill. I wish I had, because it sounds like we would have been really good friends, as long as he liked football, but I don't know about that. But it seems like we would have got along just fine, just by the type of person that's being described to me today, and as the family described him during this week. As I was speaking with the family and just reading through a lot of what was written about him, through the memories that you guys shared online, through the obituary page, the qualities that stood out to me, just as I was reading, was that he was an encourager and he was a supporter. And each of you, in your description of them today, especially the three men that got up here and shared a memory, that's exactly what seemed like he was. He was your encourager and he was your supporter in any time in life. Through life, you saw the type of qualities and the type of person that Bill was. It is these things that I want us to celebrate today. These things that I want us to think on and to remember. Thank God for the time that he gave you with Bill. The word legacy has been said a few times today. And so I think that's a really good word to say, because as a parent, you always want to leave a legacy for especially your kids, but also the people around you, right? I'm a dad of a 10-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy, and I want to leave a legacy for my kids. I want them to know what it looks like to have fun. I want them to know what it looks like to work hard. I want them to know what it looks like to be kind, to be compassionate, to be loving, to be gracious, to show empathy. I want them to have a tangible example of what that looks like, because one day I know I'm not going to be here with them. And I want them to have a tangible example of what that actually looks like in their life. And now, as I was reading through and hearing the stories that you guys have shared with me over this last week, that's exactly what Bill did in his life. He left a legacy. If you're wondering what it looks like to have fun, you have a legacy to look to, just like this is what it looks like. If you want a legacy to know is like, what does it look like to be compassionate? You have that tangible example to be compassionate. You have something to tangibly look at and to hold on to say, this is how this should be. And so we want to celebrate that today, that Bill left a legacy for us to be able to walk in, to say, this is the way life should be lived. So that's my challenge for you today, to remember those things, to hold on to those memories and walk in the example that he left you. When you have somebody leave you a legacy, it's actually a really big blessing, because that just doesn't happen too often in life. But when you have that in life, celebrate that and thank God for that. I also want to give a word of encouragement before we get into more of who Bill was, for the family and friends here today. Sometimes when it comes to losing a loved one, there's a trap that you can fall into. All right. The trap is that you feel like you have to be strong for somebody else. So in other words, it means like you have to hold in emotion. You have to be strong because you feel like somebody else over here is struggling, so you can't show emotion because you have to be strong for them, right? And I think a lot of times we do that and we bottle it all up, and we lack to show emotion, and we kind of hold things in, and that's just not a good place to be. One of the shortest verses in all Scripture is actually John 11:35. It's 2 words. It's Jesus wept. What did he weep over? The loss of a loved one. Listen, if it is okay for Jesus to grieve over the loss of a loved one, it is definitely okay for you to do that as well. So I want you to take time this week and throughout the months to grieve. I think grieving is a healthy process that we go through during times of losses that draws us together, that helps us helps us to heal in this time of hurt. So let me challenge you to resist the temptation and the pitfall to just hold it in. So saying you have to be strong for somebody else. No, grieve together. It's actually a healing process with each other. So that's my challenge to you guys today. So what are the other things that we can celebrate Bill? Like I said earlier, he was an encourager. He was support to the people around him. But most of all, he loved and he valued his family. For those who knew him, he loved his 2 daughters. Actually, that was brought up a couple of times in the live tributes today. They knew how much he cared for you, and what he was proud of you about. Right? You knew that. That's a beautiful thing in today's where kids today are wondering like what their parents are proud of them for, and they're just striving for some type of attention or some type of affirmation from their parents. That was not the case for his kids. They knew exactly what they were proud of. And that's a thing that we celebrate today. Hold on to that. God, thank you for giving me a dad that affirmed me and encouraged me today. And we want to celebrate that today. And so one of the ways that he was described by the family was that he was the best advice giver ever, right? And I think we saw that in the life tributes. The family knew who you go to in a bind. If you needed advice in the second, you call Bill, or you go knock on his door, however way you communicate. You knew that if you went to Bill, he was going to give you the right advice at the right time. And we want to celebrate today. Obviously, he was personable. He had more friends than I can ever think of. I obviously look across the room like this is one of the biggest funerals I've ever done a funeral for. And that's just a reflection of who he is, because he meant so much to so many people that they wanted to support the family in this time of need. So he was personable. If you knew him just for a little bit, then he was your friend probably, right? Like he could probably talk to the wall and be a friend with a wall, like that's just probably the type of guy that was described to me, And I have friends like that. I know the type. And so, it's those people that you just go to and you have a conversation. And even if you hadn't talked to the guy in 2 years, it felt like you've never left off. And you just pick right back up to where you left off. He was personable. He loved people, and honestly, people loved him, So Bill had what was known as the best sense of humor. Obviously, he had a sense of humor. He loved playing jokes. He loved teasing. We talked about how he teases his twin sister on her birthdays and stuff, and so he teased his dad. He teased everybody. He loved playing jokes on other people, but all in love, I think. But he loved playing jokes, and that's just the way he loved other people. We also know he was a compassionate person. He was compassionate to his families and friends, and also showed a lot of compassion to the little animals that he loved as well, right? And so he volunteered at local animal rescues, and in memory of him today, a lot of you may have donated to Mia's Mafia, which is a nonprofit that he supported. And so Bill did all of those things. We see the characteristics that he just exuded from his daily walk. And so Bill, we know, was successful at his job. Like I mentioned earlier, he was in the hospitality business, and what you've heard from the life tributes, he worked up the corporate ladder, and he was the opening manager for the Renaissance Raleigh. He was a boss that everyone loved. People loved working for Bill. His employees really enjoyed working for him, which let's be honest, like that's a good thing when you have those bosses, right? I've had bosses that I really didn't want to show up to work for, but when you have those bosses that you're like, hey, I really enjoy it. I know he may be hard on me at times, but I know he loves me. And so here's something that I read from one of the coworkers back on the memories about Bill. It said, for over 20 years, Bill has not only been an amazing boss, but a dear friend. As he would put it, when we met when I was a little teenager working banquets at the Clinton Inn, throughout my entire career with Concord, no matter position changes or regional changes, Bill has always been a great mentor, leader, and friend. Always your corner helping you succeed. That's who Bill was. Here's another quote. Bill had a gift for making you feel seen and heard, always putting your well-being before anything else. Though I only worked with him for a short time, a conversation with him was worth more than words. It was genuine care and compassion. He was a great mentor and friend. His stories of growing up and work experience were oftentimes hilarious. Bill looked out for all of us. Now it's up to us to look to each other in his memory. He will be deeply missed, but forever remembered in the stories that we share. That was the type of businessman, that was the type of boss that Bill was. And we celebrate that today. We celebrate the man who he was. Also, if you knew Bill, you know he loved motorcycles, right? And so, especially Harleys. I guess he wasn't a Honda guy. That's all right. And so I never understood the whole motorcycle thing growing up. I just didn't grow up around motorcycles. But then I married into a family who has a motorcycle dad. And so my father-in-law is big in motorcycles, Honda, sorry. And so he's a Honda guy. But I never understood it. But then once I understood like the camaraderie that he's in a motorcycle group too. And so once I understood the camaraderie that's in those groups, I could understand why he loved his motorcycles and people love kind of the community that's involved in motorcycles, because it's like one big brotherhood. And so we see Bill love going on rides with the knees in the breeze, you know, and so with the Brother Gant Club. And so these are the things that we want to remember about Bill. He was personable. He was funny. He was compassionate. He was a hard worker. He was a great advice giver. He was selfless. He was helpful. He was an encourager. He was a supporter. I mean, that's just all a few of these things that he was, right? Like I listed off like 10 things there. You probably could list off 20 more of what he was. That's who he was. These are all the things that he was. So the question that I have to ask you now is, what will you do with that legacy? Are you going to walk in that legacy, or are you just going to forget it? My challenge to you is to walk in that legacy. So to close the service today, the family thought it would be fitting just to have a moment of silence in memory of Bill. And that's what we're going to do here today. So in this moment of silence, just take time to reflect and to remember who Bill was. And at the conclusion of this service, after the service and after our moment of silence, there will be a reception held at the Crabtree Valley Marriott at 4500 Marriott Drive, Raleigh. It's at the bottom of your order of service program. So if you need to know where that is, you can just look at the bottom. But after our moment of silence, we'll be dismissed. But now take a moment to reflect on Bill.
Family would like to thank everybody who attended today's services. They are inviting everybody here back to the Crabtree Marriott down on Marriott Way